2025 was a good year for the channel, and I explored quite a few games in it. But as always, there were more games that I played that became significant experiences for me that I didn't cover in any form. I have quite a list here, so go ahead. Make yourself a cup of coffee, mint chocolate, or honeyed milk. Grab whatever Christmas cookies or cakes you have left from the holidays and relax as I reflect on the games I played last year. Like most of you know, the first game that I covered last year was Resident Evil 0, and this was indeed my first game last year. I was playing this game since December of 2024, and like most of you probably remember, this game was a struggle for me in many ways. This was a full 15-minute long video, so I'll keep it brief here, but as a whole, this is a game that significantly impacted me last year in several ways. It was a game that forced me to learn and adapt on the go, not just within the contexts of the game itself, but I also had to balance it with real life. This was not going to be a cakewalk, but I wanted to play this game, I wanted to beat it, and I wanted to make great content with it. However, it was not going to be during December. December is a very busy month and I had to put it down for 2 weeks straight before being able to go back to it, restarting it on the easiest difficulty, learning the ropes, and then coming back for that notorious hard difficulty. This was a game that I continued playing long after finishing the video, and I had to stop myself from playing it because I had bought the original RE trilogy on GOG that Christmas and I wanted to explore and review those titles as well. Most of my scores are settled with this game, but RE0 is a game that I will return to sooner or later, because the beauty of games that struggle with you at first is that once you manage to overcome the initial obstacles, once you go through your gamer crisis, rage quit and ignore the game for weeks on end, when you come back, if you come back, then you return with a better perspective. You develop a sort of bond with the game that was born out of adversities. You have no more reasons left to hate the game, and now you start to see the upsides. It's the opposite effect of when you like a game too much at first, and then it loses its luster. RE0, for me, will never lose its magic. Sniper Elite is one of my go-to franchises when I am looking for a polished stealth experience without the fluff of most other games. This franchise across the years has filled the gaps between and alongside other games. Sniper Elite 4 was not the exception, being the game that I went to each time RE0 broke me. Easily the best in the franchise, this is the one I go back to the most in recent memory due to its polished mechanics, interesting location, and well-designed levels that build and improve upon everything Sniper Elite 3 did so well. I would play the main campaign early in 2025 and then would play its DLC missions later during the summer months. I am currently replaying the main campaign, doing some challenges, finding more collectibles, and the good thing about this type of game is that due to its expansive missions and well-designed difficulty systems, no mission will ever play out in the same exact way. Another great thing about this game is that it attempts to tell a more fleshed out story, and although the events revolving that story are not the most memorable, Carl Fairborn as a protagonist gets more opportunities to show more angles. Sniper Elite V2 and 3 were all about establishing the new version of the character as one of the most badass protagonists in military games, and Sniper Elite 4 attempts to humanize the character to some extent. Even if the character mostly remains his usually stoic persona, with a curious level of dry wit, it was interesting seeing the character interact with more people aside of talking to himself during most missions. I am deeply excited and looking forward to playing Sniper Elite 5 and Resistance. Tomb Raider is another game that I find myself going back to once in a while. There is something about the atmosphere of this game, Lara's original voice actress, and the soundtrack of this game that makes it kind of timeless. In terms of puzzles and platform challenges, this is easily the most balanced of the original Tomb Raider games. It doesn't reach as high as its sequels, but never falls as hard as its sequels sometimes do. This wasn't the first time playing the game. I have played its original version and expansion various times throughout the years, courtesy of Good Old Games, but this was indeed the first time playing it through the remaster. I am planning on writing a longer video on this game, but since the early Tomb Raider games are so similar, I am thinking that maybe it is better to make a video on the original trilogy and then a second video on the second trilogy, although who knows? This might change depending on how long the scripts end up being. We'll have to see. For now, the original Tomb Raider is one of my comfort games and I love it very much. Assassin's Creed 2 is one of those games that I've had a complicated relationship with across the years. When I first played it, I didn't feel it as good as I wanted it to be, and kind of expected it to be, due to how much people have hyped this game ever since it came out. Assassin's Creed 1 is one of my favorite games of all time, and when people said that AC2 is easily the best AC ever made, I had quite the expectations. Expectations that could never be met no matter the quality of the game. AC2 is not without its flaws. It is not a perfect game, but it is a good game that I didn't get the first time I played it. The second time I enjoyed way more but still wasn't anywhere near to being one of my favorites. The third time, in 2025, was the time the game fully clicked with me, narratively and mechanically. This was the time that I finally embraced this game for what it is instead of comparing it to the first game, and being dissatisfied upon realizing how different they fundamentally are. Assassin's Creed 1 is a dark, gritty story of war and the conflicts born out of confusing and diverging worldviews, while AC2 is mostly centered around Ezio as a person and how he delves into this secret world of intrigue, at first due to his personal vendetta, and later due to his growth as an assassin that understands the merits of duty, not just to family, but to his fellow human beings. AC2 in terms of story and tone is not as lighthearted as one would think. This is in fact a pretty sad game. What makes it lighter in tones to AC1 is the character of Ezio himself and his disposition to regard life as an adventure to be enjoyed regardless of tragedy, and because he has strong family bonds that anchors him on a good path, in contrast to Altair of the first game, whose world seems bleaker mainly because the character is dragged down at first by his own arrogance and the hatred that arrogance induces in his peers. He is then burdened when he realizes his own mistakes. And of course, it doesn't help the lack of support that he gets from his corrupted mentor, who seeks to manipulate him as much as guide him. AC1 or 2 are two very different games, and funnily so, it took me 3 playthroughs to fully accept that reality and embrace the sequel for what it is. I am happy to say that Assassin's Creed 2 is now one of my favorite games in the franchise, both mechanically and narratively. The fact that shortly after Big Sister got to play the game and share her impressions with me also helped enhance my appreciation towards the game. She liked it more than I did at first, and she genuinely surprised me by offering a different perspective and impressions to story moments and characters that I by myself had originally rebuffed. So yeah, thank you, Big Sister. I started playing Days Gone with the second season of Daryl Dixon on DVD, and ended up liking this game way more than that horrendous season that systematically threw overboard all the interesting plots and characters the first season established with care and so much sophistication. I played the whole game and plan on covering it sooner or later to more depth, but overall, it was a great game with interesting mechanics, well-written characters that grow on you, and a great soundtrack that oozes with post-apocalyptic and cool biker vibes. This game is not perfect. Some parts in the story feel rushed or pointless, and the game still has some bugs and glitches now and then. But the game shines with passion and a surprising level of depth and versatility for an original IP that had no predecessor to base itself upon, and of course, Bend Studio have kept the game alive all this time with bug fixes, updates and, quite recently, a sizable DLC that adds visual improvements, haptic feedback support, new modes to play, new characters, and a bunch of other stuff. For a reason, Days Gone has gathered the strong and loyal fanbase that it now has. This is a game that I will gladly play again at some point. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. This is a very good game that I couldn't finish for various reasons. One of them was that I started playing this game during the Easter weekend, when I was having a few days off from normal life, and I figured I could squeeze this game into those few days. However, I did the mistake of starting it on the hardest difficulty, the Immortal difficulty, since the latest Prince of Persia games have been relatively easy, so this wasn't going to be any different, right? Soon after, I realized the game is hardcore indeed, the toughest Prince of Persia since the Two Thrones, and that I wouldn't be able to beat it in a week. I wasn't sure if I was going to make content out of this game, and I didn't want to slow my upload more than it already is. At some point, I will return to this game at a lower difficulty and master its systems before even considering Immortal again. I want to do this because the game is very good, a love letter to the entire franchise, not just the Sands of Time series, but even the 2008 reboot, and its story is really good, with surprisingly interesting and so far multi-layered characters. The developers really took this game seriously, and so will I. Ghost of Tsushima. What a game, and certainly one of my favorites this year. It was everything I expected and wanted, and then some. I finished the main campaign, but there is still plenty more to uncover, and of course, the Iki Island DLC that I've still to play. This is one of the best open world games ever made, with one of the best combat systems ever. Ghost of Tsushima excels because it knows what it wants to be and commits 100% to it. People say that this is the best Assassin's Creed Ubisoft is unable to make, and although that is true to an extent, the reason why is because Sucker Punch used AC as a focus of inspiration, but instead of replicating the formula, like so many other games do, they ended up doing their own thing with the ideas, and that creative freedom is exactly what makes this game so much better than any AC game. It's not just the fact that we can ride a horse, it is the reality that this game features one of the most fluid and versatile horses in gaming history, that would put any horse in AC game to shame. It's not just the fact that we can do air assassinations or multi-kills, it's how we do it and how responsive the game feels. It's how the game manages optional objectives. It's how the game tells its story. It's all of these things well made and put together what makes this game the ultimate Assassin's Creed. This is one of those games that I envisioned myself playing for many years. The gorgeous world, the polished gameplay, the story, the protagonist Jin Sakai, all of it is so good. Shadow Tactics and its DLC Aiko's Choice were games that I played alongside Ghost of Tsushima. This is also one of the best games I have played this year. One of the best tactical stealth games in the market, Shadow Tactics could have conformed to just being a Commando's disciple, but unlike Commando games, this game also tells a pretty interesting story with characters that surprise me in every way. The 5 main characters are extremely well written and acted, and watching their stories unfold through both main game and DLC was one of my most gratifying gaming experiences of 2025. The gameplay by itself was good enough to maintain my interest for 9 straight missions without stop. I really didn't want to play anything else at the time, but it was the story and the characters that carried me all the way to the end without effort. This was one of the few games that at times could outshine the same Ghost of Tsushima this year. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. I started replaying this game by the time the remake rumor started to take too much wind, and this led to the creation of my AC4 remake wishlist video. I still haven't finished this second playthrough. The boring modern day is getting in the way too much this second time, but Black Flag is one of those games that you always come back to, and I certainly will. The Last of Us. Not the first time playing it, and certainly not the last. I did a full playthrough during the time I was writing this video. However, this is one of those games that I go back to time and time again. replaying the encounters or at times some of my favorite chapters. Not only because the story is great, but because the gameplay is so much fun. The mechanics are tight, well thought and responsive, the AI phenomenal, and the level design perfect for both combat and stealth. The Last of Us is not the most mechanically deep game, but its systems work very well and it provides an immersive sandbox experience that I've yet to find in any other game. No encounter has ever played the same way, and even if its weapons and tools are limited when put in contrast to other bigger games, each one of them are so well thought out that you will find yourself trying new things with your tools and almost always being positively surprised at how the game reacts to your ideas. What a game! There is a reason why this game has sparked the long-lasting success and recognition that it has, even if its legacy is, sadly, divisive. Now, the original Resident Evil was one of my favorite projects last year, and I made a whole 25-minute long review and retrospective analysis in it, comparing it to the remake and pointing out that there are some things that, in fact, I prefer here than in the remake. Obviously, the remake is the better game in many ways, and if you have time and disposition to play just one, then the remake is the better, more polished and complete experience. But if you have time and the patience for retro games, then do not sleep on this one. Next is Red Dead Redemption, one of the many open world games that I played last year, although not all of them I got to finish. This is one of those. I played for a while. The gameplay is good, the world immersive, great story and compelling lead, but this simply wasn't the time for it, and I know Red Dead Redemption deserves better. So I booked the game for the time being and will be getting back to it when I feel I can give it the time it deserves. By the time I do, I will probably do a whole restart. Assassin's Creed Origins. The same as Red Dead. Beautiful world, great story, compelling protagonist, and I seem to be playing at the right moment because I was playing this desert adventure while enduring a rain drought in real life, huh? How cool is that? This way, I got all through the first chapter, the one that takes place in Siwa, but didn't continue playing not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't want to deal with arbitrary RPG systems. Right off the bat, you are encountering enemies that are 50 levels above you, and instead of blocking those regions like previous AC games would do, Origins allows you to continue exploring. But then, a group of brigands appear out of nowhere and cut you down before you can even assess what's going on. I know there is a great game hidden in this beautiful recreation of ancient Egypt, but this wasn't the time for me to struggle with out-of-place RPG systems. I'm still considering if I restart this one because, unlike Red Dead, that wisely has no RPG systems and thus you lose less by replaying, I already have a 10+ level Bayek, and I wouldn't like to lose that progress. I still have to decide on this one. Let's move on. After finishing Aiko's Choice, I still wanted more Oriental stealth gameplay, and thus figured out this to be a good time to return to AC Chronicles China, one of the best AC games very few people have actually played, and one of the few games I am truly interested in completing. AC China is one of the few AC games that fully commits to the stealth experience, allowing us to play as Xiao Jun, one of the most badass and clever assassins in the whole franchise. I have finished this game around 3 times now, and I do not discard the possibility of going back to it at one point or another. It is a blessedly short game, and thus replaying it feels enticing instead of daunting. Commandos 2: Men of Honor. The other game that I played after finishing Shadow Tactics, and what better other option than the game upon which Shadow Tactics itself was so deeply inspired. I have barely scratched the surface with this one, mainly because I am currently playing a modded version that allows you to play not just the second game's missions, but also the first game's missions, its expansion, and the third game, along with hundreds of fan-made mods, all in the package of the second game, which easily had the best engine of the 3 original Commandos. I am playing this game once in a while when I get the need of playing around with my digital G.I. Joes. These games never had the most developed story, so you can play each mission almost as a standalone adventure once in a while. That was the beauty of Shadow Tactics later on, whose story was engaging enough to motivate full story commitment and various sessions in a row. After having spent the last few years playing 3D games within virtual open worlds, Shadow Tactics reminded me of how much fun an isometric point-and-click game can be. Even if Iratus, Lord of the Dead, is not a stealth game, it is still a menu-intensive point-and-click game that requires you to look at maps, build armies, and fight turn-based combat. I am not an expert on roguelikes. This is easily my first one. But this is a game that I originally got for free during a GOG giveaway, and I liked its aesthetics in particular because they reminded me of the Necropolis Castle of Heroes 3. You play as this ancient necromancer who has returned from the dead to fulfill his quest of destroying all living things from this world because to him, life is a disease. To make things even better, we have Stefan Waite, the actor that plays Caleb in the Blood series, voicing Iratus and having a damn good time with this one.
Don't know why there's no sun up in the sky, bony weather incoming.
The game carries its Heroes 3 and Darkest Dungeon inspirations proudly, particularly during combat and the way it looks. All units are unique and interesting to look at, and their attacks carry a satisfying punch. If you combine their strengths and weaknesses well with your own spells and artifacts, you can create a solid army that will wreak havoc among the living forces opposing you. But make no mistake, this game is not for the faint of heart, and, very much like Heroes and Darkest Dungeon, you will have to get used to the idea of losing troops because enemies hit as hard as you do. It's a fun, chaotic, but tough game. Since we're talking about games in which we play as the bad guy, I might as well make an honorary mention to Exmorph Defense, a cool tower defense that sees you playing as an alien invading Earth. You have to build towers with resources that you gather from destroyed buildings and enemy troops, but unlike other tower defense games, this game also integrates into its core gameplay loop strong elements of top-down shooters. The player character is a spaceship that you see on screen firing down at everything. With this character you lead the charge against the humans by building the towers that will defend the mother core and fight enemies yourself. What makes the unnamed alien pilot interesting in the game is that you can use him to hold off enemies in areas that you were not able to fully barricade with towers because you ran out of resources, something that you can't always do in these games. The alien pilot is also the only character in the game that consistently fight enemy bosses. Towers help during these fights, but the bosses will easily destroy them, requiring of you to handle the bulk of the fight. Now, for as much as I like this game, I didn't play much of it last year, but it is another GOG giveaway that turned out to be one of my most played games of 2021, 2022, and so on. Definitely recommend it. Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. I went back to this game due to the update, although I still haven't been able to beat the game in Dark Rot mode. This is a game that I've covered in various videos before, so I won't get into too much detail here. Suffice to say that it was a game that I personally appreciated very much, even if it wasn't as well received as was Irina. Hellblade 2 is far from perfect and it didn't quite fulfill anyone's expectations, but it is one of the best story sequels I have experienced in a long time. I have played a lot of this game ever since I played it the first time in 2024, and I've spoken a lot about it in my Unity video, and in a few other videos before that one, and I will continue talking about it in future videos because Unity as a game is both good and bad, and most people that play it for extended periods of time develop a sort of love and hate relationship with it. For all of its flaws, Unity manages to do several things way better than other AC games before and after, and it is because of that potential that I find myself going back to this game time and time again, enjoying the parkour and the intricate world design, replaying missions again and again to find and exploit new gaps and solutions within the missions. From all the AC games that I've played, Unity is the one that gets closer to realizing its sandbox potential while also delivering a fairly compelling story. This year in particular, the game got another reason for me to love it because my big brother started playing it, and we've been getting together whenever we can to play the co-op, and although the co-op is at times even buggier than the main game, we've had a lot of fun and have developed a lot of memories we will always cherish. Unity is another of those games that I won't stop playing anytime soon. It is almost the perfect AC game. Resident Evil 2. Need I say anything else about this game? Those that have watched my video on this game know how much I liked it, and how deeply its story and characters touched me. This is one of my favorite RE games, and it left me completely hyped for the third game. In fact, I'm so hyped right now that as soon as I finish editing and uploading this video, I am going to start playing Resident Evil 3, and that's a promise. Berserk and the Band of the Hawk. After finishing my RE2 project, I started this game. Now, you've probably seen my video on this one, and my opinions have not changed. If anything, they've strengthened since then. The story of Berserk is a truly impressive and multi-layered one. I've yet to finish the game, but I certainly will, and who knows, maybe I'll get the manga as well, because this is a story that I want to know more of. I am really invested in the characters and what is to become of them, and depending on time and a few other things, I easily envision myself making analytical videos on these characters. They are really that good. Next is Dying Light. This was my October obsession. This game is so cool and fun, and even if the story isn't the best, the rest about this game is really good. This is one of those few games that make the prospect of open world exploration feel enticing due to how much fun and solid the parkour is to use and how well the cities complement the parkour. Now, like you already know if you've seen my review of this game, there were some things that I didn't like, or better said, hated about this game. Like how the game gets severely misbalanced on higher difficulties and the horrendous tendency of respawning you in the worst of places. But aside of that, Dying Light is a great game that I am still playing. Recently, I was celebrating Christmas in Haran, throwing snowballs at my enemies, drinking eggnog, killing annoying little zombies dressed like elves, bringing gifts to the children at the hideout, and overall becoming Santa's enormous helper. I really want to play even more of this game, and I will certainly get into the sequel sooner rather than later. This is one of my favorite AC games, and one that I come back to once in a while. There is something about Constantinopolis' design that pulls me in. Something about the music and of course Allman Ezio's character design, writing and performance that pull me back to this game more often than Brotherhood and the same AC2. AC2 was a game that I fully embraced this year, but Revelations I embraced since the first time I played it several years ago, and unlike other games whose luster was reduced a little through time and through the painful process of replaying dragging segments, Revelations is a game that I continue enjoying after various playthroughs, and the only AC game that I fully 100%ed and would gladly do so again. Dark Souls. You know this game. Everyone knows this game. And most of you watching probably know how much this game meant for me in 2024. I love this game with all my heart and will always cherish what it stands for. Feelings aside, Dark Souls is a really fun game with one of the best worlds I've witnessed in recent memory, and with such a great combat system. When people think about Souls-likes, mainly if they haven't played any, they will almost always think about ghostly knights, grueling boss fights, and the by now memed "you died" scream. But this game is way more than just that. It's more sandbox than many games that are tagged as such. The amounts of flexibility that you have playing this game is astounding, and how the game encourages you to experiment and learn new things due to the way the world is built and the enemies designed without ever popping you a single tutorial screen is worthy of praise. I finished this game twice now, and I'm currently on my third New Game Plus, aside of having created other characters to try out different builds and combat strategies. FromSoft really deserved their praises and sales with this one, as well as with the other final game on this list. The game I played the most this year, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, was a game that I was drawn to for many years, but never approached due to its reputation for being one of the hardest games ever made. At this point, I have played over 100 hours of this game, unlocked the Shura ending, and I am currently on my second playthrough, and I can tell you this is not one of the hardest games ever made, at least not for me. Difficulty is extremely subjective, but I have played really hard games in my time, games like Prince of Persia: The Shadow and the Flame and The Elder Scrolls I Arena, and these were 100 times tougher in their unique ways. Sekiro was a game made for me, a game that mixed the best things about Dark Souls along with Cloak and Dagger storytelling, themes that resonate with me very much, like loyalty, sacrifice, and the price of eternal life. The Wolf, throughout 2025, slowly and quietly entered my list of favorite characters. His subtle depth, his unwavering loyalty, his seemingly inexistent yet very present gentleness and compassion. These are all traits that I admire in people and strive to hold myself to the best of my abilities. I love how this game builds on the premise of self-improvement, demonstrated in the challenging gameplay, but also in the way the story is written and the characters evolve. This is a story that I want to know more of, a game that I want to master even more. I want to become a better swordsman. I want to learn the nooks and crannies of all my prosthetics, combat arts and ninjutsus, because this game, like the illustrious Leo K once said, has so much sauce. This is a game that I played almost every month after starting it, not just because it is so much fun, but because I wanted to master it and knew I could. Even when I was playing other games, I would, once every 2 days, boot this one again and fight Genichiro in the boss rush mode, and in doing so I fully understood and appreciated the combat system more than I would have had I pushed myself to finish it sooner. I've taken my time with this game, which is exactly what I did with Dark Souls, and I've noticed that it helps me, in particular, better handle these FromSoft titles. This is an experience that I am not rushing because I want it to last. Aside of Shadow Tactics, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice was the only other game that could, and at times actually did, overshadow the same Ghost of Tsushima. I will continue playing this game, and I will talk about it in the channel, both in terms of mechanics and in terms of story, because the story of this game is one of those that I could talk at length in an analysis video. I am so happy I got to play this game, because this is a game I did not know I needed until I started playing it. Nowadays, this is one of my favorite games ever. And that's it, the list of games I played the most in 2025. There were a few other titles here and there, but I barely scratched the hour with those, so I didn't include them here. Let's see how this year comes and goes, because I might do a video like this on the games of 2026. Like I said, I will start playing Resident Evil 3, so stay on the lookout for that one. Until then, stay safe and have a great year.